I'm kind of like I think people like Michael Jordan. I'm kind of a unique kind of character.
And I have
the analytics
I love
You just see how games and possessions stay intense, how they mean more.
I'm not putting him on.
I think the U.S. is going to all of a sudden win.
Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Nothing But Respect. My name is Patrick Redford. With me, as always, is Harry Krinsky, and today we are talking about the big leaked text that everyone's seen is going around. So I'm just going to read from them now. July 11th, 2025. Eamon, Whalen, you write, and a little Joan Berenger minutes in there. October 6th, 2025, you write, Berenger would get the fourth big minutes, but Rocco didn't look too bad. Later that day, in a message to Harry and I, you said, Berenger is looking great for someone who started hooping in 2021. This continues. January 13th, you send me a tweet where Chris French says, Joan Berenger will get opportunity in the rotation tonight with the red siren emoji. And then, let's see, January 24th, 2026, you say Rudy and Berenger should call for sanctions against the U.S. 8 days earlier, you write Berenger minutes versus Rockets, no context provided. And the final text I just want to read into the record here is February 5th, 2026. LaMelo, Ant, Jaden, Nas, Berenger is big rings. So first of all, I just want you to confirm that these texts are real, and I would like you to defend your values.
Yes, I think you're missing because it didn't have the keyword search. You're missing when I just sent you a video of my TV of me playing a block, like a really, really nice block by Berenger, where he got the help defense and like hit it off the glass, and it was like, and then I think he maybe ran down and got a layup on the other end. So yes,
you understand you are under oath, right?
Okay. Yeah, I'll go to the mat for Johan.
These are the BDF files. We have the KDF elsewhere, and
and for listeners who aren't into Wolves esoterica, this is the 19-year-old French rookie that we got as part of the cat trade.
Plea agreement with Jean-Luc Brunel.
But yes, 19-year-old French center who started hooping after COVID because he was a soccer player and he was growing too big for his cleats, as the story goes. I haven't fact checked that, but that's what everyone says is what happened.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I do like the idea that they have Rudy Gobert and they were like, this guy is someone's Wario. We have to get the Mario. Like that's how I'm reading this. It's not that like Berenger is Gobert's Wario, but like Berenger is sort of like the good version, and Rudy is like the evil manifestation.
There's
like
a very funny
tall French guy.
Like Wolves preseason promo video where friend of the pod Michael Grady, or person the pod admires, Michael Grady, the Wolves play-by-play guy, is having a interview. He interviews every player in this little kind of glossy produced video. But he does a sit down at a French bistro with Rudy and Berenger. And Berenger he doesn't talk. He's just destroying the food on his plate the entire time. And they're just bringing him another course and he's just not talking and he's just eating. And Michael Grady's just like, dude, you were hungry, man. Like, what's going on? So he's still, I think he could still be growing.
There we go. Yeah, Berenger.
You watched some minutes with me. He was looking good.
That's true. We went. You and I and your brother. I'm a tall guy. I have a plus wingspan, but Eamon and his brother are both multiple inches taller than me. And hanging out with them, I feel like a point guard for once. It's like kind of refreshing. But yeah, they insisted we go watch the Wolves win by like 30 or 40 and stay through the entire game to just watch these Berenger and Bones Highland garbage time minutes. So this is the level of Wolves expert we have on today.
You're Patrick. You're kind of like Ant going up to the Whalen family and being like, "Man, you guys got a lot of wings. I can't wait to go play for Atlanta." No, so you said earlier, Eamon, you said you haven't fact checked this, and I think speaking of fact checking is a very useful transition here because we have to talk about a story that took over my experience with watching the Sunday night All-Star game, and I think many others, which is these alleged, and so it's these alleged Kevin Durant leaked burner tweets, and something important that as we tackle this ongoing story is it's not clear if these are real or not. There is a good amount of maybe rhizomatic circumstantial evidence, which is like a bunch of Twitter anons sort of all being like, this is true because of a different Twitter anon has told me that it's true. And so we're sort of figuring it out. My perspective on this, Patrick, I suspect you agree, is like, at this point, regardless of if the stuff, there's two stories here. There's like the fact that these things even got leaked or became a story, and then there's like the contents of the stuff. So even if the contents of the stuff ends up being not true, it is still kind of become a story, because then there's this like giant Israeli drone manufacturing related Twitter moment around an NBA player, which is like worthwhile. But so let me start with let me first ask you guys this, because it's very hard to figure out where all of this starts and ends. When did this first reach your guys' feed? The Twitter, the alleged Kevin Durant burner DMs.
This was, I guess, the All-Star game, we should say, was yesterday. The official NBR stance on that is not our problem.
Yep.
People say it was competitive. I'm very happy for them. But this was the real All-Star Sunday for me. I just saw that in our Slack, Tom Lay posted a video of KD looking at his phone before the game after this had leaked. And that was the first I saw of this. There's some debate over whether or not the syntax used by the alleged Durant person disqualified him or like super qualified him,
right?
Because famously he's like, he's in the trenches, he's responding to people all the time, and the fact that KD hasn't tweeted since then is also a very funny piece of evidence here. But like that's how I first found out about it, and I didn't watch a second of All-Star Weekend. I hope it was fun for those who did.
Right.
I found out through the text in our group thread about we need to talk about this KD stuff, because I had I periodically log myself out of Twitter, sort of like putting an extra lock on the box of drugs or whatever way. So I was blissfully unaware of anything going on, and I watched the All-Star highlights this morning. And I will remind you guys, it's 1 year anniversary of my first appearance. Because remember, I did some shoe leather from All-Star San Francisco last year.
Wow, I forgot about this. I thought you were going to remind us that Anthony Edwards won the All-Star Game MVP.
I did just write that note on my notepad. Ant won MVP.
Okay, well, so let me for our listeners and for everybody, let me just walk through what this story is, and then we can maybe unpack it a little bit together. At a certain point in the middle of the All-Star Game, or in the leading up to the All-Star Game, a sort of eruption on the collective id of basketball Twitter started being like, there are leaked Kevin Durant burner texts. Another Kevin Durant burner has been revealed, and there's all these screenshots of this Kevin Durant grouped, or this burner account allegedly linked to Kevin Durant, saying all of this stuff, like pretty like mask off stuff about his teammates, like saying Jabari Smith Jr. sucks, saying like Ben Simmons, at least he liked Ben Simmons because he passed, saying Steve Kerr, showed preferential treatment to Steph Curry, kind of like all
talking
the stuff
shit about Devin Booker, Alperen Şengün, like said James Harden was slightly delusional, but I understand him, which I thought was kind of beautiful.
It was beautiful. He also said Kyrie expected the white European to play honorable hoops. I liked that.
Yeah.
That's a great sentence.
Well, no, there's right. We should get into that eventually.
Allegedly, yeah.
The alleged Kevin Durant alleged burner is being really funny. It's some of it. I think with the clear exception of making a joke about something, which I will get into in a sec, which is all of this came to light because of the following exchange, which centers, believe it or not, Israeli drone technology. So the first instance of this happened when a guy named Pranav Sriraman, who appears to only tweet about, or his bio, at least according to whatever, is his main thing is that Andy Reid needs to be fired from the Kansas City Chiefs. He uses the hashtag walrus out, which and like something like free the blubber or something, which is like an insinuation that Andy Reid is a walrus and needs to be freed from the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't quite understand that.
It could be pro Reid. Like perhaps he's like he needs to find greener pastures. You know,
that's true. Like free the walrus from bureaucracy. Yeah, no, it's a great point. And this kind of like ambient anon Twitter discourse is like, my brain has perfectly figured out how to filter this stuff out. Like, and so I don't even notice this stuff unless I'm directed to it. But this gentleman, Pranav, is arguing that Adam Silver has made the trophies in the for various games worse. He's being like, "Can you go ahead?"
I'd like to interject here because he's doing a quote tweet of a quote tweet of a quote tweet, where the initial tweet is from one of these aggregator accounts that we talked last night that is sponsored by like a third tier betting company that is not Kalshi, aggregating a quote from Cade Cunningham on the All-Star format where he says, "When you go back to East versus West, I want to experience what the greats play in." And then someone who has Sonics in the bio is quote tweeting this and is saying, "Adam Silver's overdoing it. You don't mess with tradition," which just like, as an editorial note, this is like the type of stuff that happens on this like layer of Twitter you're talking about, where it's if you see a team in the bio, they'll be always making these reflexive like stuff used to be better engagement farming type things because it always works. So then Pranav quote tweets that and says he changed the design of every major trophy for no reason at all, showing 3 different trophies that Silver changed. And this was the one that went viral that caught KD's attention.
Yes. And so Kevin Durant responds, as he is wont to do.
This is real KD is responding here.
Real Kevin Durant, yes. KD Trey 5 responds, "Damn, y'all even hate trophies?" And Pranav immediately jumps on that and says, "Not as much as I hate your drone investments." Which is, that is a reference to Kevin Durant's investment in Skydio, which is a drone that is used in surveillance. They have a bunch of contracts with Department of Defense and the IDF. Like they so Pranav in this is spitting and shows he cares about trophies. He also cares about drone manufacturing. It's good to have different interests and passions. KD kind of skirts this in this strange way. Not, I would say, he missed the mark here. He says, "So you hate trophies? My God, you guys are just miserable." Kind of like being like, "Actually, we're just talking basketball." Pranav says, "Not the only thing I mentioned," and then he basically says, "I answered your question. Will you answer my question about Skydio, a drone company you invested in selling to the IDF, or will you stick by your brand of deflecting and dunking?" Pretty good, Twitter own. He's certainly won the battle. The question of whether or not this kind of Twitter discourse does anything is a different question, but he certainly dunked on Kevin Durant in the metaphorical sense here.
And here we kind of see both the strength and weakness of KD's willingness to post through anything. Like,
yes.
In one sense, I do sort of admire, like, he will have a bad game and then just get online and just argue with people calling him a bum, which like that level of like sort of face-to-face engagement in this era of like, where someone is saying that Cade Cunningham is costing himself money because he doesn't have a stylist, where like every part of their public persona is so curated. Like, I do sort of like that. However, you do not got to hand it to him on the Skydio stuff, which has been, ambiently out there, but like mostly unaddressed. And the idea that like, NBA reporters are going to derail a press conference to ask him about this is like sort of, maybe they should, but like, I don't think anyone expected Chris Haynes in a TV interview to be like, "Great first quarter, 7 for 8 from the field. What's up with Skydio? Do you think we got to hear both sides about the Gaza genocide?" Like, that's not going to happen. But like, he's putting himself in a situation to be dunked on like this, I guess, which I think is an important context to have for what comes next after the Pranav fight.
Yes. Then a mysterious account by the name of Based Frog 23 comes in, and this is where I would say this is where the gasoline hits the flint or whatever. Because this post that I'm about to say has 10 million views now. So this was the one that kind of like went into Power Drive. He quote tweets and says, "Do you believe KDF are instantly iconic will address the burner of his at Get Higher 77? Weird how all his friends in search engine, I don't understand what that means, are the ones who are responding to it, and he goes in chats on it, trashing his teammates, and posts a number of these screenshots with the account Get Higher 77, and a bunch of screenshots from Get Higher 77 outlining the various DMs that Kevin Durant has said, which include all the ones that we said at the top, and one that is again, we've talked, I think, last episode about how all this stuff is like at the same registry. So like the same voice he's using to joke about Alperen Sengun, he's also like joking about the fact that he's supplying drones to Israel. He like makes a joke about like, kind of a flippant joke that of course reads as in very poor taste when you think about the fact that he's like literally making money off these fucking,
says, if they need drones, we got you.
Yeah, like exactly. That. Yeah. So I think what do we make of this? I don't know. Like,
it feels both simultaneously like there's the case for it being real and fake don't feel like equally strong, I guess, in my mind, but there is like strong evidence on both sides. Like, I've been particularly drawn to the syntax and diction of the alleged KD account. Like, they feel like guys who, it feels a lot of times like someone who's replying to NBA Centel tweets, where it's just like, this is like kind of too stupid for me to actually believe it's KD. Like, it doesn't exactly match up with the voice of his regular Twitter, but again, it's like someone who's in these trenches, like, will definitely pick up on those verbal tics. So again, it's not disqualifying or qualifying either way.
It's I'm increased, like, as I've thought about it more and looked at it more, I'm starting to lean more towards believing that it's true. At first it seemed too good to be true, but then I just sort of thought, so the case that they would be artificial is that, like, basically I was thinking, if this is a real group chat on Twitter, they're doing an elaborate bit where one of them just pretends to be Kevin Durant for like months on end, and they respond to him like he's Kevin Durant, and he says he's Kevin Durant. That's the part where it just where it starts to seem like it's real, because they're all talking like he is Kevin Durant. And so if they're either created out of whole cloth, or this is like a running elaborate bit for their, like, we're going to ensnare KD in like a burner scandal by a guy acting like he's KD for months on end, because the screenshots that are collected are over a span of, they're like from 2022 to 2024. So this is over like, that cover a lot of milestones in his career that people are, the people that are trying to argue that it's real are sort of lining up the stuff in the group chat with things that actually happened to KD. None of that has seemed that convincing to me. Like, oh, wow, okay, that doesn't make any sense. But just the sort of plausibility of a group chat where one guy pretends he's Kevin Durant is the part where that's starting to be like, okay, maybe there is something to this, because that seems less believable than Kevin Durant, what we know about him being in a group chat saying this shit. So I'm actually starting to believe that it's more true, although I agree with Patrick is that the lines seem way too good to be true in terms of like, got, smoke for every one of his teammates, hates everyone. Like, the narrative of Kevin Durant being this sort of like miserable, misanthropic, no one understands me, I have to go from team to team, like that it all lines up so neatly that it seems too on the nose. But that's what I sort of clicked for me last night. I'm just like, wait, like, that doesn't really make that much sense. That's very hard to believe that they would have this, unless this is just a completely fake group chat, which also seems hard to believe.
Right.
Yeah, I'm now just dying at the idea of like this being this like very elaborate improv bit where you're like in character as Kevin Durant, because like if I was doing this and pretending to be KD, I would just be like, hey guys, I scored 23 points on 8 for 11 shooting as we beat the Suns. What did you think of? Like, it would be just like the idea that you are Kevin Durant would be the joke every single time. You wouldn't just be this like extremely deep. I mean, maybe they're just better actors than I would be.
Have I ever told you guys about my idea for a to catch a Redditor?
No.
Okay. Okay. I've long, because this is lining up with this, I've long thought it would be very funny to create a subreddit with like 1,000 fake accounts and one real guy. And so it's like the like every account is being operated by me with like, all just kind of like total the idea I came up with, like total glurp problems. And so it's just like it's creating this entire language that like glurp is a real thing and people post their total glurp problems. And it's just, but it's all me except for one guy. And
You're
I
the
like
Truman
kind of,
Show to some point.
Yeah. Like I digitally ensnare him. So this sort of, which I haven't done, to be clear.
It's like that show Jury Duty, but on Reddit.
Yes, yeah, basically like a digital jury duty. So there's the part, because it's interesting that you were talking about the addiction. The part that I have been fixated on, and that again connects to like this could equally be an argument for it being real versus argument being fake, is this notion that it's the way a lot of these people, a lot of these anons on Twitter are talking, is that it is an open secret that this has existed. And that part is very confusing to me as somebody who feels like I'm not deeply in the trenches, but at least enough to like see if there's an that part. It doesn't pass the smell test to me that there's this like obvious bombshell of a thing that like 45 Twitter anons knew was going on, and we're just like, oh yeah, like I was, I'm just gatekeeping that. Like, don't ask me about that, little bro. Like, that just doesn't.
It's like the sewers of NBA Twitter. It's like the secret tunnels of NBA Twitter. Like,
exactly. But then I was DMing one of these anons, and I was asking him kind of about this, and the thing that came to me was like, well, if you're in a group chat with Kevin Durant, like you're like, oh, okay, I could like blow his whole shit up and get out of this thing where I have cool access to the 15th best basketball player of all time, or I can, keep this as my secret and like text my friends about it and not, blow up the spot. And from that perspective, I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that. That's probably what I would do. Yeah,
like, it feels cool to like have this like private access, and it's like privacy is kind of what makes it cool. And I do just think generally, like internet hygiene wise, there's been, I feel like you just don't see DMs leaked as much anymore. I think there's just kind of been this like tacit cultural understanding that like the act of leaking things from private chats, like that very act can sort of like take away from like the content in there, unless it's someone like being insanely racist.
As I was going to say, outside of circles of young GOP staffers, we don't see a lot of
exactly.
a lot of group chats leaked. One point of clarifying the chronology after Based Frog 23, reveals this burner account. Then what account starts posting all of the screenshots? Is it that one that does the master file? Like who? It's just okay. Like so. Someone...
No. That's a good. I'm nodding because that's a good question.
Okay.
And speak. The answer speaks to kind of the complete eroding of Twitter as like a useful. I did find myself thinking like, God, thank God that we don't use this for like breaking news anymore. Yeah. Or like, emerging situations. Because I just was like, I could not have been more lost actively attempting to use a news site to figure out news. Like the answer was basically, and the only solution I could find was basically continuing to refresh the For You page, hoping that the algorithm would like get that I was looking for it and send it to me, because it was not. It's nonlinear. It was like across a bunch of accounts. There is no, my best guess is that a bunch of people had been holding on, assuming this is real, had been holding on to screenshots and were like, well, if he's posted, like, I'm going to post. And so it created this again, sort of rhizomatic leaking situation.
And to your kind of earlier point about like the posts where people will obliquely be like something's happening,
Vague posting.
it's almost shamsical in the sense that like what they're communicating is not like some meaningful information, but that they know some meaningful information.
Yeah.
And like I am currently sort of against my will part of this like 40+ person Sacramento Kings group chat that has like hundreds and hundreds of DMs in it every day that like I don't post in. I want to maintain it presence in it for sort of anthropological reasons. But like you can see in there sometimes people will be talking and there's like these like kind of source things because people in there are sort of close to the team and it's like, well, this is what Scott Perry's thinking. And then you can see all of them tweet in the same vague manner about like, you know, number 31's the problem or whatever, but no one wants to talk about it. But it's not even that direct, where it's like they're sort of signaling to the world, not so much that they know information, that they are part of a group chat, which is like, I don't know, man. I think I'm too unk for this.
There are some accounts that for a long time have been sort of like pseudo insiders that'll sometimes break stories before the press does. Like, do any of you guys follow that guy Grads?
Oh yeah.
Like he broke something as far back as like Jimmy Butler and the Wolves. Like he's like really like he must be plugged into friends with several players. Like those accounts really fascinate me too. Or like that guy Black Trey who was he worked for the Athletic for a little bit. Like he knows tons of them. So like that part is pretty interesting to me too. Like guys who are friends with NBA players or former players that then are also active on NBA Twitter and they're sort of like blending that line as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, I think the moment at which something becomes news in like the NBA world is like when Shams tweets it or whatever. But like that before that happens, there are like a dozen conversations between front office people, agents, like the player themselves, and as we've learned in like the betting scandal story and like innumerable other stories in like the social media era, like people talk and like this stuff will get out. It just doesn't like there's that same sort of uncertainty of like a story's veracity in this very DMy way until like the imprimatur of facts, like, you know, tweets it out. So like that, I guess my point there is that there will be more and more stories like this where it's just like, it's totally unclear like how real something is.
Okay. Let's now do a little bit of that will look silly if it's turned out this is fake, but let's live in the world of this is true for a second. What do we make of this? Like, is this going to tank the Rockets season? Like, is it, you know, and I say that, I'll say, I don't think so. My perspective on this is that that there's far higher levels of open communication inside these teams than we want to imagine. And like, you know, there's mean stuff about Jabari in here. Like, my sense is that like Jabari knows where he stands with Kevin Durant and like because they compete and do this extremely kind of like emotional, high leverage, high pressure job every day. Like I don't really buy that a DM like would hurt these people's feelings so much. And that this kind of like narrative is like, oh my God, could this affect the team chemistry is a little overblown. But I don't know. I mean, these are people. Like I can't really say. What do you guys think?
I mean, their coach is Ime Udoka. Like he is probably doing acts of verbal abuse that would like shock anyone listening to this podcast every day. And like, you know, I don't know if you guys have watched the Rockets over the last like month or so, but they're playing like, I guess this is a term I'm borrowing from you, Eamon, just like CTE offense. They're just like, it's just the dumbest shit over and over again. And like, you can tell like KD's grouchiness is like not a secret to any of them. Like he's just openly like moping on the floor whenever someone takes a shot. And like, it just looks like kind of bad and ugly. So like, clearly there are, you know, these things are not like secrets. Like I'm sure that everyone knows where everyone stands.
Yeah, I would. It seems like with professional athletes, like they can overcome even like feuds and like not liking one another because they're like all such psycho competitors and such. But then that also does I don't know. It can put a ceiling on how good they are because chemistry and like gelling is an important thing. And if like a team does hate each other, I do think that they'll only get so far beyond like what their talent will take them. But I don't like. What did he call? He called Javaris and Jr. like retarded or something. Like they're pretty crazy. Like it's not just like clown. Like they're pretty. Knife
they're mean,
in the back. They're
it's
mean.
Very pointed,
like they're pretty mean, and to pretty much everyone except who comes out good, Harden, and like I can't think of another player who comes out like well.
What if there are GMs in there where he's like, Reed Shepherd is awesome. Eamon got to play him 45 minutes a game. I love that guy. Like we need the counter narrative to emerge. Like what is KD's ideal 5-man lineup right now?
I don't think there's any Amon Thompson in there, is there?
I mean, who would talk shit about that guy?
Yeah, right. You can't. Okay, and then what about the thing floating over all of this? And this kind of transitions us into talking about the LeBron stuff. Is like okay. I want to be. I think a lot of, punditry, such that we're doing this, can get caught in this like Twitter bubble where it's like, well, this is a big story, and it's like, no, it's not. People are just talking about it on Twitter. But the amount of Israel that has Israel discussion, conversation of Israel has ramped up in NBA circles, is my sense, over the last couple weeks. There was that Steph Curry piece, and then there's this Kevin Durant thing, and then somebody asked LeBron James about Israel at the All-Star game. We'll get into the specifics of that, but like, what do you make of this groundswell of people, critiquing NBA players mostly for their involvement or passive involvement in genocide, and like there's that, and then there's the like memification of it all as well.
Yeah, Patrick's group chat story. I was gonna bring up that I have a friend who is a fellow Wolves diehard, potential NBR listener as well. And last season, he got added to a very, very large Wolves WhatsApp chat, and he immediately got kicked out for calling out one of the admins for posting about Israel, and he immediately became a thing, and he got like ejected from this like 100-person Wolves group chat for coming at him. I mean, it's just kind of. I just felt like it was probably only a matter of time before this happened, and then I guess maybe the most simple take on the drone investments for everybody is that like that's like a part of the American economy that's like growing and profitable is defense tech. So it would make sense like if these guys if they're working with financial advisors who are telling them where to put their investments, like those are good investments right now with the rise of hard tech and like the return of the military industrial complex growing. So that would be like my first, but I'd be curious what you think, Patrick.
I think it sort of speaks to this sense of almost like frustration and powerlessness, where like you see the story about like KD's drone investment or like the Steph stuff or whatever, and you see that there's like just very little follow up. Like no one is like I said earlier, like no one's asking KD about this in a press conference. Like no one is really taking this stuff that seriously. I think for like some occasionally explicable reasons. Like it's like you said, it's like this is part of a portfolio of like 1,000 investments, and the idea of cherry picking through probably strikes reporters as like gauche in some way, but also like, all these people are online all day. They just continue to see horrifying images and like reports and horrors coming out of Gaza and stuff. And I think like those two things in concert, like then lead to this pressure basically only coming from like, not only coming from like Twitter anons or whatever, but like coming bottom up, I guess.
I mean, even the ostensible serious media and journalism took so long to talk about Gaza in the actual language that would like reflect the truth and what was actually happening and asking people good questions. And so like, I wouldn't expect the completely bought out by gambling and access sports media with, exceptions of places like Defector to actually talk about that in any way. Cause they won't even ask like slightly more hard-hitting questions that aren't based on like the most controversial topic in American politics right now. So
Yeah. And I think, Harry, I think your point about the memification is something that's like very important to underline here, because I feel like you saw like 6 or 8 months ago this phenomenon of people just calling anything they didn't like spiritually Israeli, which to me, like, it's basically like that felt counterproductive and like a little anti-Semitic to me. It was just like anything you don't like, you're just like, well, you know, that's Jewish stuff. Like that's just, that's not what they're saying, but that's like kind of
that's
how,
the
like,
implication. That's the mimetic implication.
If you expand the definition so broadly to just be like this thing I don't like, then it's like you're actually kind of cheapening like this very serious thing that I think you maybe do care about sincerely.
also, like, you live in America, like,
Yeah.
like, come on, like, we're not. It's not that much different.
So you're both talking about something that I was thinking about too, which is like what we all went to, because I think we thought about this a lot, is like you do go to the kind of like realist grounded sense where you're like, okay, this is an investment portfolio, like, you know, it's not like they're sending the drone, it's not like Katie's like signing fucking autographing drones or whatever, but and you go there because I think it's a reaction to maybe a failed attempt of an earlier social media apparatus to like overly gotcha people such that it decreased the value of the movement of like actually calling out power, and instead you sort of like cheapen your attempt to call out power by overdoing that kind of thing. And I go there too on my initial thought where I'm like, okay, you know, like I'm cynical about it, I guess. I'm like, these are fucking rich people. They're trying to get richer. Like, what do you want from them? But then, you know, I find myself going the other way too, where I'm like, yeah, there should be social pressure, especially as the league tries, you know, out of one side of the mouth, the league is trying to get younger and trying to appeal to, you know, whatever. And it's like a Gen Z. And it's like, you know what is extremely unpopular among Gen Z? American supporting Gaza. I mean, excuse me, American supporting the genocide in Gaza. Like, so part of me is sort of actually becoming a little less cynical about this, where I'm like, yeah, maybe like if 80% of the young audience, the young coveted audience that the NBA is trying to get is like legitimately pissed that Kevin Durant is, you know, dealing in you know, has any hand, or, you know, has not divested in some capacity. I could see that leading to a change of some kind. Like it would be, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that pressure is worth keeping up. And like, I feel like the excuse a lot of them would make was basically like, I don't have internet. Like, you know, I don't concern myself with stuff that's going on in like the world. And even if you take them at their word, like that's not good enough, man. Like I think with something this important, like it is worth continuing to press them as much as possible.
Yeah, there's definitely a return of the I don't pay attention to politics, not really my thing. But yeah, I didn't, when I had said that before, I did not mean to say that they should not be social pressured or like shouldn't be asked about it or anything like that. Like they absolutely should, because that's it's like incredibly like you said, even in their own best financial interests. Like a lot of times when you're thinking about the US supporting Israel, broadly speaking, like even on your terms of like American hegemony or the continuation, like it's suicidal. And the same with the NBA, like tying yourself to this, even on your own cynical, totally economic terms, will be negative in the end. And so, but that's just sort of like how we've found ourselves with Israel writ large and all of U.S. industry or culture industries or whatever. And so there does something, I don't know. I do think that in sports, like the courage is contagious thing is real. I just feel like the dam would need to break with someone of the stature of LeBron, perhaps not saying he's only heard good things about Israel. Like I do think if there was a Kaepernick-like figure, it could break through and that would be really interesting to see how they would be marginalized speaking on Israel rather than speaking on American police brutality. Because that's another thing I've been thinking of like why NBA players aren't, whether it's Gaza or you'd think maybe more they'd be talking about ICE in Minneapolis, but compared to 2020 is that those like 2020 issue about police brutality against black people, normally black men, that's something that probably all of them, I'm sure all of them have dealt with in their life. That speaks directly to their lived experience in America. They feel like they're experts on that. Whereas it is, I don't think they can speak from that place. And again, it's not an excuse, but that's sort of like why I'm thinking they're just a lot more reticent. Plus the 6 years of sort of like cultural backsliding in terms of celebrities addressing politics.
That's like a perfect transition into the next thing we were going to talk about. Like, you know, we had the LeBron Israel stuff on the run sheet, but I feel like Harry, as you kind of point out here, he's basically in non-answer mode. Like he's kind of doing the I don't have internet there.
Yeah. And it's like the peak, like you said, peak LeBron lying voice, like they did the AI.
Well, that was it. So yeah, the few we were jamming about this, and the two quick funny things I'll say are one, it is just like the mimetic value of it is incredible in that he is saying something like totally, you know, absurd on its face, but then he's also lying. He's doing the LeBron lying thing. He's read one page of the Israel book. Like it's just an incredible lie. And then the other part that I found uncanny watching this morning was he's doing this media voice, which is the media voice that all the AI things that copy LeBron use. So I did have this feeling where he's like, I've been to Israel. I saw a crocodile bombardeo there. Like I kept expecting him to like go into like, you know, AI voice, which is just, you know.
My favorite of those is like, it was a really nice day in the Shire. I saw my guy Gandalf.
But it's like, it is that exact voice where he's there. But, and then just as we do transition, it's or my read of LeBron's quote is that he was kind of unprepared for this thing, goes into PR voice, has almost gotten away with like a perfect non-answer, and then says this like stupid thing, which is like, I've never heard a bad thing about Israel. And you know, whether or not he knows in the moment he's fucked up, like he has, because that's just such like a blunder and such a on its face stupid thing to say. Yeah. But there's something there about all this stuff we're talking about here, which is like, it's crazy this is the first time he's asked about it. It's crazy that like, you know, the obvious journalistic value of asking him about that to put him in a situation where he has to say this, like, so
also we should clarify, the question was pretty wild. It was just, what do you
it was
think?
From an Israeli reporter.
It was an Israeli reporter just being like,
oh really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, she says, what do you think of Israel? And like, what do you think of Denny Avdia? And he just goes like, yeah, Danny deserves to be an all-star. And then he just sort of is like, I think, fumbling for like what to say next. But he should have just gone for the, you know, like school of PR. Like, if you don't want to answer a question, just answer, but just say another answer. Just like say what you want to talk about. Like, is what he should have done, and just like not answered it. But I don't know. But it was a really like weird, like put you on the spot. Like it is very
reverse gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me for saying this. It's a very Israeli question.
Wow. Okay. One of the things we talked about for having you on, Eamon, is that you are this show's Minnesota correspondent. And you were in Minneapolis when Renee Good was killed, or when Alex Pritty was killed, or both?
When Renee Good was killed. Yep.
Yeah. And
I actually went to the Wolves game against the Cavs where they did the moment of silence that day. Oh, wow.
And what was that like?
I was actually late to the game, so I missed the moment of silence. I wish I'm a journalist. I have to be accurate about what I witnessed. I'm not going to lie and say I made the moment of silence. But that game was fairly their normalcy. But I think the game against, because it was a really weird. I mean, the Warriors were in town for a 72-hour like doubleheader, kind of like baseball series style things they do. And they I think they ended up being there for longer than normal because they postponed the game on the Saturday where Alex Preddy was killed, and then they had the game Sunday, and Warriors like blew him out. And Steve Kerr said that was like the weirdest environment I've ever played a basketball game in. Like no one's mind was there, et cetera, et cetera. That was also like that. Saturday was that huge like 100,000 person march, and then Friday was the march, Saturday was the shooting, Sunday was the game. So like that was kind of crazy for the Warriors too, to have been in town for that entire thing. But yes, I was there with the Renee Good. I went to the vigil. I was supposed to leave Minneapolis the day before. I ended up staying extra for some family stuff. And then, I went to the vigil. I'm sure most people have followed the story, know that that's like 8 to 10 blocks from where George Floyd was killed, very much in the same neighborhood. It's the neighborhood that I went to high school in. And then the Alex Preddy was direct. I don't know. It's like I like woke up just like, what the fuck? Because in the actual shot, you can see behind him, there's a sign that's like Peninsula. That's like it's like a Malaysian restaurant. That street is Nicollet Avenue in Minneapolis. That section is called Eat Street, and it's like tons of immigrant-owned restaurants, Vietnamese. Chet Holmgren's favorite Jamaican spot is on that street. There's a hipster donut shop. There's like, but my first adult apartment was like 3 blocks from there. My most recent. I moved from Minneapolis 3 years ago, but I used to write at Spy House coffee shop, walk down to Peninsula for their lunch special, walk back, like tons of formative, like adult and even teenage memories on that particular stretch of street. And so like the Alex Preddy was like extremely surreal. And then I've spent a lot of time over the last 5 years writing about Minneapolis post George Floyd, and then also writing about like MAGA and the right. And so Operation Metro Surge felt like these two like things culminating together. And I've written a lot about like Minneapolis and the sort of mind of the right. And so those two things sort of coming together was, it's all been, pretty surreal.
That's like, that's extremely, just sounds so jarring to like this street, as like, oh, a nice place to eat. Like this sort of belongs to me, but it's like you have so many personal associations with it. Yeah. Then see become this like international, like, flashpoint.
And like in my 20s, I did this music magazine in Minneapolis. We had like an office event space above, again, Pimento Jamaican Kitchen, Chet's spot, across the street from this place called Copper Hen Bakery Cafe. It's sort of like a yuppie kind of brunch place, but there's an incredible article at Google like Racket, Minnesota, Copper Hen. But there's a report written about how this brunch spot became this sort of like triage emergency like clinic basically after the Preddy shooting with all of the tear gas and mace and everything. And they're like having a brunch service, and they basically just like stopped it and started treating people, and like it was all hands on deck. It's an incredible first person account of that, but just having it be this like street I know so well basically turned into occupied territory. Like 2020, living in Minneapolis in 2020 was crazy enough, but this is just another level.
You sort of mentioned earlier like why Minneapolis has this like place in the right wing imagination. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing something longer on this, but there's a lot of, I would say, kind of like push and pull that between like Minneapolis and the sort of like specter of it in the right wing mind, and then in Trump's mind as well. But there is like, I would say my main kind of way I'm thinking about it is that amongst kind of like non-coastal states, Minneapolis is probably one of the most like liberal states in the country, and has this like long, like fairly like long tradition of like prairie populism and refugee resettlement, and sending very progressive politicians to Congress. Paul Wellstone, which was kind of like Bernie Sanders style senator, to Keith Ellison, the first Muslim congressman, to Ilhan Omar, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's like, I would say that it's kind of like where the crisis of liberalism will play out rather than in like a coastal city. And I think with 2020, I think partly with Trump, like Trump is always, even in his 2016 run, he was sort of fear-mongering about Somalis in Minnesota. That's been a long sort of specter for the right, and that is sort of the combination that Somalis are Black Muslim immigrants, which is sort of like this like 3 levels of demonization that you can do. And Minneapolis has the largest population outside of Somalia, and it's this sort of like, you know, cultural collision of this like, you know, Scandinavians and Minnesotans can be portrayed as these like liberal dupes being like, you know, like being overly kind to all of these refugee populations that then walk all over them. That's sort of like the right-wing perception. But then with Trump, I also do think that 2020, people, like a lot of people will say, oh, he thinks that he won Minnesota. And I don't know if Trump actually thinks that he won any of the elections. I think that he thinks Minnesota is when all the shit started going wrong for me. Because Trump lost 2020 because of COVID, but COVID and George Floyd are part of the same event for me. Like they don't have, like, that doesn't happen without COVID. And so I think Trump identifies it as that is the place where shit started to crumble, is Minneapolis. And I think he has a very wounded ego towards Minneapolis and this like small city kind of like fucking shit up for me. And then there's Walz, who is like, for whatever reason, has had the staying power with the right as like a meme. Like he really got under their skin in a way. And I don't think he was actually ready for it. And that's a little bit of like what my sort of like push and pull is, that there is this like actual thing that they want to attack in Minneapolis. Like there is a genuine counterweight to Trumpism in their vision and the sort of, you know, civic ideal and this sort of corny stuff. And then there are also ways that Minnesota and Minneapolis and people can like make themselves somewhat of like an easy or easily caricatured version of a liberal. And that has been going back for years. Like the some of the most famous politicians like throughout Minnesota history are all liberal academics that become politicians. And so there's this sort of like earnestness and naivete that can be both good and can kind of like seem like it can lead the nation, and then can also sometimes like not be totally ready for what the right wing is like planning for you and like looking at you to do, if that makes sense to you guys. And so with Operation Metro Surge, it's bizarre because it was based on the specter of Somali fraud, and then they're going to do an immigration operation based on fraud, which doesn't make any sense because Somali people are by and large American citizens. After, and this is like how MAGA always overplays their hand, or have been overplaying their hand. The guy who is the federal prosecutor in Minnesota, who has been prosecuting the fraud insofar as it exists, and there was one large case. It wasn't like it was just uncovered. It had been going on for years, but it was just sort of discovered and made into a political object by the right. That guy, the federal prosecutor, was asked to investigate Renee Good's wife, and he quit. Yeah. And he is now Don Lemon's lawyer. Don Lemon got arrested. And so that any kind of specter that it was about fraud now is totally gone. And then it was just like, this is a small enough city where we can really make it look like it's occupied, because Chicago and LA, those were deployments of, I think, of like a couple hundred ICE agents, 600. And Minneapolis at its height was 3,000. And this is a city that's like 400 to 500,000 people. It's not a big city. And they have been doing the whole metro area, but it was a combination of things that could make them look, I think, like maximally dominant to the sort of ideal recipient of the sort of like repression, which is like what they envision this, blue-haired, they, them barista screaming at ice in the street. That's like, it kind of like all came together, basically. Sorry, that was long.
No, it was
No,
helpful though.
that was great.
The other thing,
you go ahead, Harry.
yeah, just two other small things. One, I learned in the process of kind of reading about all this that Minnesota was the one state that didn't vote for Reagan.
Slight asterisk because it was Walter Mondale running, who is from Minnesota.
Oh, he's from
So it's
Minnesota.
like he's
right,
not
so
gonna
lose his own
that would
whatever.
be really bad. But yes, you're right.
But you're right. So I'll get to it's just kind of an interesting, like, to your point of this like long lineage of prairie progressive.
I mean, they had the only for all intents and purposes now it's basically just like a Democratic Party, but the Democratic Party in Minnesota is the DFL. It's the Democratic Farmer Labor Party. And so for many years in Minnesota, there was a third party that was, well, there's actually four, and the Farmer and Labor Party, they combined. And so a lot of times the Farmer Labor Party was the left wing in state politics, and the Democratic Party was like sort of irrelevant, and they were like the 10%. So there was this, like, they have an actual Labor Party in Minnesota, which like makes, I think, just makes it a more defined like contrast. But that is now, it's kind of gone by the wayside.
We're talking about like the 2020 and 2026 moments, and like the way that 2020 informs 2026, I think is fairly obvious. And like the way that Minneapolis has come to represent this like liberal excess, like this sort of hotbed of white race traders, like kind of thing is interesting. But I think you wrote this huge story for Mother Jones that you did like years and years of reporting on, that I think that story actually basically explains what happened in the middle, and I think really does the good work of connecting 2020 to 2026. So this is this like huge feature story about this guy, Nathan Seabrook. And in him, he personifies essentially the like bringing of the war home, a sort of foreign military contractor who was like accused of doing all this crazy stuff overseas, who then is like, I will, like, that is part of his resume. And what ICE is doing is like sort of fundamentally different, but like essentially what we are seeing is like, tactics used against like restive populations abroad being brought home. And I wonder if you see Seabrook as like in lineage with that, and if you could sort of like talk about those links there.
Yeah, I was in November, I published this story with Mother Jones called How a Mercenary Became a Minneapolis Mall Cop. And it is about, in 2021, so this is the summer after George Floyd, there was a police killing, black man named Winston Smith at this mall. And the mall then had protests at it, and they hired a private security firm to crack down on the protests. And this private security firm was led by a veteran turned military contractor from the war in Iraq. Then he worked as a foreign service agent for the UN for years, kind of protecting diplomats, but like a private military contractor. And his firm called Conflict Resolution Group was very much, they looked like ICE does now, which is how...
You said Conflict Resolution Group?
Yeah, it's
great name.
I mean, if you look at security firms' names, they're all fairly just like, I don't know if dystopic's the right word, but just sort of like
80s
counter
power
what you would
dystopian.
Think. Yeah. And they dressed like ICE, where it's sort of plain clothes with tactical gear and long guns and masks. And that is also how, like, through doing this story and researching, that's the contractor uniform from Iraq. So that is just like, in terms of just like thinking about the aesthetics of war, that is like the war being brought home. And like in Iraq, most of it, or a large portion of the war was privatized to the point, and that was sort of the really like opening salvo of this large privatization of warfare that over the last 20 years has gotten totally out of control. But Seabrook, the guy, was from Minneapolis, and during the 2020 unrest, he had worked for private security crews, and it had clicked for him that like, oh wow, we're in a sort of new era of unrest and political violence and instability in America, and I can create this security firm for people who are seeking, what does he say? Make your uncertainty go away. And and that is like, I think, a really like something I kind of hold throughout the story, and this like, with private security, like you're incentivized to sort of make things sketchier and less safe and like more uncertain because it increases your job security. And so and again, it's like you take this like kernel of truth, like after 2020, Minneapolis was like in rough shape. Like I don't think like anyone would really argue with that. And then take it to be this whole thing where it's like, I have this, he's right. I have internal comms of him writing the police officers, communicating with the MPD, being like, I've located an Antifa cell by this mall, and like really greatly inflating the threat that these like teenage, protesters or, people in their early 20s, that was just, it was not close to the level that it was in 2020, but he's just like inflating it like it's this crazy threat. And that mindset of like, Minneapolis is a war zone. There are Antifa terrorists everywhere. There are, lurking criminals and rioters like behind every corner. That mindset, and thus you need to go in there like you would go into Kabul or Fallujah or whatever. That is the mindset that is driving the ICE Operation Metro Surge, I think. And there's this like very politicized repression of Antifa, radical leftists. And again, it's like such like you can't say it's completely fabricated. Yes, there are activists, but it's like, it's this like phantom thing that is like such a part of this, I don't know, like how the right wing just is able to create these demons for themselves that are just so outsized their reality. I just feel like that's part of what's driving ICE. And then also it's like, okay, conflict resolution group was, I think he had up to like 30 or 40 employees tops, but they're just like, yeah, some guys that are fairly unaccountable, riding around the city with long guns and dressed like military guys. But then ICE was like, and I wrote the story and I describe it as sort of like an ominous precursor to ICE, but that was before Operation Metro Surge. I was just thinking then of like Chicago or LA. So then to see it actually happen in Minneapolis, like 3 times the level that it was there, does feel like a coming together, but then it's like not privatized now. Now it's like the actual largest funded federal law enforcement agency. So it's a lot of like that, that war coming home mindset. And, I talked to people in my piece, like experts on the industry that kind of talked about, the U.S. presence in the Middle East is winding down, and you have a generation of contractors that are sort of looking for opportunities and things to do. And, I'd imagine a lot of the like would-be people with that now can just go to ICE and they can get a public employment and probably like a good, get their whatever signing
Health
bonuses
insurance,
and good jobs. And so it's a little bit, I don't know what, I imagine privatization will continue, but it is an interesting thing how they've just kind of deputized that into a federal agency.
Yeah, there's this like this aspect of it of them sort of being convinced of, or at least convinced of the utility of convincing other people of this like scary war zone, threats around every corner. And like people have written about this where like you can read aspects of the deployment as basically trying to create events, trying to create like TV and flashpoints. And you see this in the way that like, they responded to the Renee Good thing by being like, well, if you look at the angle of her wheel, she was clearly trying to kill this guy by driving at 2 miles an hour, sort of vaguely towards him. And like, it's clear that was bullshit, but like the telling thing was like the degree to which they went to the mattresses to like make it a thing. But then like the potential backlash of that is that you get, not only this like mass protest movement, but like you get basically the first time that like public figures and athletes, like not in like the Mark Ruffalo type, like always committed, but just like Tyrese Halliburton saying like Alex Preddy was murdered. And you get like people actually like sticking their necks out for the first time since 2020. And we've sort of talked a little bit about like the backlash of like, saying anything is bad post Floyd is like comes with sort of negative social consequences. But like, what do you guys make of like this being the first thing that got athletes to speak out in so long?
It's probably how stark the Alex Preddy video is. Probably like I have like it is one interesting contrast with the like this police shooting in 2021 that then like was the precursor of CRG. It wasn't on video, and so there was just much less protest. Like there's just like that is just true. If there is a video of something and it is clear as day, it travels so much more. And I think the first one that can be a little bit like Renee Good, it could be a little bit like, oh shit, that, that's fucking crazy. But then the second one within like, however, within a month, the day after this really big protest, and then you like empty a clip into a dude with his like on his hands and knees. I think that has to get someone, but I will say no one from the Wolves. I mean, the biggest thing from the Wolves that we had was Jalen Clark on his Instagram story being like sick world and like reposting it. And then the team chaplain had a really really amazing statement, I thought.
Oh,
but
really?
then no one else
Wasn't he
really,
like calling into reporters from a protest where he's like, I gotta go right now. Like ICE is back. These guys or something.
And the team then made a statement like together, but it's really like, and this is like and then, like Finch had a part in his press conference where he addressed it. But the general kind of vibe from the Wolves was like, it's always just kind of like the city rides for us, so we ride for the city kind of thing. Like we care about our community. I haven't seen any statement that besides from the chaplain that was like, fuck ICE, we need ICE out, we need to end this, Donald Trump is doing something bad. Like there's none of that. It's really like we stand for our community because they stand for us, and that's it. And that's sort of like Julius Randle did the just like, I don't do politics, but like I support the fans kind of thing. But I did see like that, the Preddy thing did seem like the dam broke, and there was some kind of, it might have just been the courage is contagious thing, or like the PR people were like, okay, you guys should start asking about this. Cause like Donovan Mitchell said something as well. Like there was like a good amount in that like Monday, Tuesday NBA games from people. But I'd be curious what you think, Harry.
Yeah, doesn't relate to basketball really, but I've been thinking about how direct action as it relates to the coverage it gets or the amplifying effect of media has changed as the media has changed, right? And so like if you're the value, going first principles style, like the value of a protest 35 years ago was you would get enough people such that it had to be news, such that the national or local news could then amplify it because it was newsworthy, because, oh my God, they got so many people out here, right? And that was like, that is the kernel of value. Like that's drawing the attention to a thing that was not previously getting attention. And the environment is of course completely different now, such that it has got me spinning out around like these videos, the things that do end up being the rocket launch, what used to be a New York Times story or a nice whatever, are now, like they are DIY iPhone videos that can really, really change and manipulate like scale and, they can manipulate importance. They can do all these things that you couldn't do before. And so I did have this like kind of sick thought of like the things that get people's attention are no longer scale in amount of people coming together. It is scale of how horrendous what is being depicted in. And so to your point of the Peretti, like, execution style murder, like that, I mean, this sounds like cold saying, but like that functions as a useful thing to get people's eyeballs on it because it's so horrific and it's so like fucked up, and that there's got to be a better way to like draw attention to event without what you need to do to be like sacrificing people, of course, but I don't know what it is. Like because like the only stuff that breaks through are these like horrific things, and so like I don't quite know how you. I'm sure organizers are thinking about this stuff, but like how do you think about optimizing for your goals and your media values like getting, or your values getting mediated without it being like, yeah, we just got to get ourselves put in situations where like we get our teeth kicked in by like evil police. Like I just don't know. So that's
that's a similar point made in the Vincent Bevins "If We Burn" book about protest movements. So just about like 2010s digitally mediated protest movements follow this thing of like small protests, over the top repression that is then captured on video that then leads to the bigger protests.
Right.
I will also say I just remembered the NBA player that made the strongest statement on what's happening in Minneapolis is Karl Anthony Towns. God bless him. He did and that's, sort of like goes with his sort of corniness and earnestness, but like and that was something that's why he was so beloved by the fans, is that he did kind of go above and beyond to try to be quote unquote part of the community. But yeah, I just remembered that because I had seen it in the run sheet about.
No, it's a good, he's a good example of these things. On
the same point, part of the story I just wrote about Seabrook and CRG, like that was kind of a story locally. Like people were like, oh, that's fucking creepy. Like these mercenary guys, like, but like it would have been a huge story if they would have killed someone. You know what I mean? Like that it didn't become a huge story because probably they didn't like really fuck something up. It was just basically like, this was like an ominous thing that like, if this continues on this road, something bad will happen. Like this is creepy on its own, but like no one has gotten seriously injured yet. And so that like, I do agree with you that is like, I don't know if like, the baseline of American life is so like shitty and brutal right now that people need something that really like breaks it like that. But what were you going to say about that?
Yeah. And you just that like you're caring about stuff without the like value of the spectacle requires these like degrees of abstraction, which like in post-consensus reality, in sort of this like era of essentially like media being weaponized to like create new, this sounds so fucking stupid when I say it like this, but you know what I mean? Like media being weaponized to create new sort of like competing versions of reality. Like all of that haze.
That's what Adam Silver said the broadcasts are going to be.
Basically, cutting through all that haze requires something so unambiguous as like a guy getting shot.
Yes, exactly.
And it's like, well, like, I don't know, like athletes live in the world of 2026. Like they saw what happened in 2020. They saw the sort of abortive strike change nothing. And like, essentially they saw years and years of people just screaming about ratings because of wokeness and being like, damn, unfortunately at the end of the day, I am a professional basketball player. And like, that's sort of my purview.
One other thing that a few weeks ago, when we had Jeremy Gordon on, he made this joke, but that I think was prescient about being like, he was talking about the Michael Porter Jr. podcast, and he's like, how could you meaningfully like cover this? Because it would take 30 hours to listen to every episode of whatever. And I've been thinking about it a lot because I do think there's this like crisis of credibility of understanding the context going on.
Dude,
where
yes,
there's so much raw data that is getting put at us. And if you're an NBA player, like, I totally understand being like, if I'm going to speak on this, like, let me at least have my head wrapped around the whole thing. But the process of trying to wrap your head around the whole thing it's impossible for me. And I'm not a professional basketball player. And so I think, and then there's so much, I think about this with like criticizing, like a Tucker Carlson or whatever. You'll like look at a clip and you'll be like, well, like Tucker Carlson's racist. It's like, oh, there you go. The left cherry picking some quote. And it's like, well, I'm not going to fucking watch 17 hours of Tucker Carlson. I don't know what you want from me. Like, I'm going with the information I have. And I just see this. I could see that being a paralyzing thing for athletes, being like, I want to speak out, but this is a muddy issue. And I don't even know where to begin to like get the quote unquote truth. But yeah, Eamon, you were lighting up.
Oh, I was thinking that in context of like, I've written about the right-wing new media and manosphere influencers and streamers and stuff. And a lot of that stuff is like, you have to, like, they put out so much hours of shit that to be able to feel like you can be a credible critic of it even is like
exactly. No, 100%. That's kind of what Jeremy
a lot of like
too.
bathing in it and immersing yourself in it that like frankly I just like don't have the fucking time for a lot of it. Like I've been like, man, the world really needs like a in-depth like I show speed magazine profile. But like that would require like you have to be on his stream, like the writer would have to only do that for however long, and like there's only so many places that can afford that.
And like and then the stuff that does break out has to be like so crazy. Like a 6'5" Australian Terrachad androgenic has flown to the US and bone smash Max in order to hunt down the ASU frat leader and engage in a mog-off to avenge clavicular after the brutal frame mog incident that took place last week. You know what I mean?
That's a real tweet or like headline.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Well, that's not a headline, but
yeah.
The clavicular it's a great example of the like, I don't know, maybe it's not a great example, but it's an example of this thing breaking containment, nobody having enough time to like mesh themselves fully in kind of like what's going on here, because who has the time to, like you said, spend 92 hours with a like methed out 20-year-old to like really get it right. And so all the coverage to me is starting to feel a little stale, and because it only exists in the kind of mimetic realm of like, the stuff you're talking about.
No. Do we want to do a little Minnesota Timberwolves?
Yeah, wait. I do want to talk a little bit about the actual.
There's no elegant way to transition out of that, but.
Well, Ant is a swag. Ant is mogging the NBA right now. He mogged All-Star. There's your transition.
And he does. Well, so this is interesting. I don't know if we can get too like highfalutin, but like I just noticed now this is 2 All-Stars in a row now, where Ant has been like, first off, when did face of the league when was that ever a thing? People are always acting like it's like the MVP, like it's been a long-standing like thing that people then win, and it's like you were the face of, like, it's such a weird.
Dude, I can't believe they gave Dwight Howard face of the league in 09. That was such a
bizarre.
The voters.
I guess it's just because LeBron, it was just like consensus, and you didn't need to think about it or whatever, and there isn't like a consensus replacement. But that's to say, he's been asked about this now 2 All-Stars in a row, and both times he says he kind of is like, man, they got Wemby for that. And I just think that's interesting. About how his reaction to that is, where he's like almost seeing through how like corny and manufactured it is.
Right, he declined.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, he's basically saying that's that's a media thing. That's not my problem.
Right.
Like, I'm just playing basketball.
Right.
To me, I really like the Ant Wemby kind of rivalry. Like, I think Ant really like respects him and loves him because fundamentally he's like, oh, well, this guy's 2 feet taller than me, so it kind of like I'm kind of off the hook for having to kick his ass. Like, he's in the eternal position of underdog here, and he talks about Wemby with this like very sweet sense of reverence towards him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that duel, my favorite game of the year so far was him and Wemby had this January game where the last like 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, they were just like going shot for shot, like who can have
They had a mog off.
It was a mog off. It was a mog off. Wemby won, but it was like insane. I mean, that's the
amazing.
biggest thing with Ant this year is that he's gotten so clutch. Before he used to fuck up at the end of games and not know what to do, but like now he makes, I don't know, that like shot he made against the Nuggets on Christmas to put it into OT. Like he makes insane contested threes at the end of the fourth quarter now, which is like so cool for the player of his talent to take that leap.
Yeah, he's just like he became Steph Curry last year, basically, 3-point shooting wise. My main question with the Wolves is like, it seemed like 2 weeks ago, like they were really gearing up to go for Giannis. Like they Mike Conley, they boomeranged his ass all the way around the league before he came back. But like, it really seemed like they were clearing the decks to go and do that. And obviously they didn't, but like, how do you feel about that not happening? Where were you at? Like when it seemed like it was going to happen, like, what do you make of this team this year?
I'm honestly, I'm pretty relieved that didn't happen. But I'm also, I have been opposed to all of the trades they've done, except for the D'Lo for Conley and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But like, I didn't like the Rudy trade at first. I didn't like the Towns for Randall and Dante, and both of those have like worked out. So I am more, because I'm like too sentimental. Like I like, oh, I want to see the team develop. And that's how I think I might be right about, I think the sentimentalness might be grounded in fact here, because that trade you'd have to do Jaden, Randall, and Nas, if not Jaden, Randall, Nas, and Rudy, like to get because we have no draft picks. So part of that trade would have been trading some guys 4 first rounds to then trade to Milwaukee's. Yeah. But I just am really in love with the Ant, Jaden, Nas trio, because they're all the same age. They've all been there for like 5 years together. Ant and Jaden were drafted together. If their contracts all play out, they'll have played together for 9 straight years. And I just I like that more than a 2-man super team, as much as I'm probably kidding myself of like how much I would like Giannis and how fun that would be on its own. And like how much like Giannis right now is way better. Like he's better than Ant. Like he's like so good when he's on, but I just don't like, and like what you guys have been, the weak link, strong link thing, I would be sort of doubtful about how good they could be, how good Ant, Giannis, and like, it would be like, Dosunmu and Jalen Clark and Baron J. Like I wouldn't, or LaMelo if we got picked him up. Cause that was what that was about. We had called about LaMelo apparently. So I like the team we have, especially with the Dosunmu pickup. I think now we have 7 really good players, like a very, very solid 7-man rotation, and then a sort of like Bones Highland if he's hot, and Jalen Clark, Terrence Shannon. They've kind of been the big disappointment of the year, but and then in January Zach Lowe said they're like his sleeper title contender.
Yeah.
And then right after he said that, they lost 5 in a row and especially they lost back-to-back against the Pelicans and the Clippers. And like, that was so funny. They have, at their best, they're a top 4 team in the NBA, I think. And they can beat any team. They are won the Thunder season series. They beat the Spurs, but they have too many games where they just bullshit and they don't try on defense. And they'll, at the end of a fourth quarter, they'll have these meltdowns where they really look like a middle school team. Like when you are learning how to play basketball and your team melts down on like a press or something. They just do that too much. And it's an interesting thing because a lot of like the people calling, like Finch's seat is getting hot. And he recently just had a little like thing where you had to, like, Rudy kind of called him out, and then he called out Rudy. And it's a little bit like, ooh, if you're getting like defensive like that, it's probably not a good sign. So with the thing with like, why do they always blow leads and like seem like they're not trying at times? And it's like Finch came in at the end of Ant's rookie year. And so it's like, I can't really tell if is it a Finch thing or an Ant thing? Is it because our best player is 24 and he kind of doesn't try on defense sometimes? Is it because the coach isn't holding them accountable, quote unquote? Because Finch is like, I think probably the opposite of like Ime Udoka. Finch is like a real chill, I don't know, Don Nelson type, like maybe not smoking weed with the players, but like we're homies kind of, he's like a player's coach kind of guy.
Coach, yeah.
That has a lot of people being like, he doesn't hold people accountable. And so I don't quite know if that deficiency is just of like Ant's immaturity that then like rubs off on the rest of the team, or if that's like a Finch not holding them accountable, being enough of a drill sergeant, and like would Ant actually benefit from like a drill sergeant Udoka style coach? So, but I still think they could win the finals.
Before one last thing, where are you at with the Rob Dillingham? Do you see him? These second draft kind of people, like high value, like high draft picks that, especially point guards, find a second team. Like there's actually a pretty good track record for this kind of stuff. Dillingham is
that was a Wolves draft,
yeah,
number 4 overall pick, and then he managed to have a career.
The tricky part with Dillingham is he is a tiny little guy, and we've been talking about like the end of tiny ball. I am worried about that for Dillingham, but like as somebody who crunched the tape and presumably was rooting for his success, what do you see as the likelihood, or like why do you think it ultimately didn't work with Dillingham?
There was a little bit of the Kuminga problem in that he was drafted onto a team that was not well suited for like his development track, and Dillingham did have, I don't think Finch handled that well. He didn't coach him well. His confidence was kind of destroyed. But at the same time, the run that he got, he had some good moments. Like his best moment was probably last year he led a comeback against the Thunder. It was like kind of all young guys, and Dillingham was.
Ant set out the whole fourth quarter.
He was really he was breaking their defense, like really getting into the paint constantly. And he is quick and shifty, but the thing, and he would have way too often where he thought he had blown by a guy, and then they would just easily recover and swat his shit to out of bounds. And so I don't know if with enough reps that he starts to learn how to get a shot off there, or if that just was a signal that he's just not he's not going to survive in the NBA because he can't get his shot off. Right. And he did have, in his Bulls debut or his second game or something, he had like 16 and like 6, but then I saw that he got put into the game when they were down like 30 or something. It was like it was a garbage time stat line. But I would be pretty pessimistic just because of that.
Dude, when you just said that, he could be on my number 1 watch list for Mickey Mouse March. I could totally see Rob Dillingham averaging 17 a game in March. He's like playing against,
Well, and he's going to be playing alongside Jaden Ivey, like another sort of like flyer redemption, former high lottery guy, also trying to like save his career on this like totally fake ass Bulls teams. That's going to be a fun situation to monitor. I really like the Wolves. Like you've kind of gotten me into them, but like when they are really on, when Jaden is like attacking the weak side like crazy and like Ant is engaged on defense, like you can kind of see a glimmer of not quite like a level that no one else can hit, but like they can, like the Thunder kind of kicked the shit out of them last year, but like they can hit this level where it's like they're really, really, really hard to deal with. Like when they're all swarming around, like the thing that let them down last year wasn't their defense. Like they played a good defensive series. It was that like they couldn't score on the Thunder defense at all. And like I worry less about that than like the defense falling off, because they basically need Rudy to be at this like insane level. And I kind of like that they have this like big contradiction at the heart of their team where it's like they can't do anything unless they play this guy who everyone kind of hates and is like a frustrating offensive player, but yet like remains a totally essential part of both their defense and offense. Like it's like they if they solve this problem, they can win everything, but it's like an extremely difficult, like totally annoying problem to solve.
Yeah, when
And
Rudy's not
I
on the
love that
court,
they're like cursed.
When Rudy's not on the court, they're like bottom 5 defense, pretty much.
Yeah, they totally can't do anything.
Yeah, no, it is true, and we'll see if he gets played off the court in the playoffs, which is typically it's a misnomer. It's typically that he gets played off because he's a 0 on offense in the playoffs, not because he can't play defense. But I did show, I don't know if it'll come up on Google, but he did have a little month where Rudy was getting in his bag offensively as much as he does. He did have a Rudy Gobert bag work about 40-second edit where he's throwing behind the back passes. He was doing Euro steps. So it's coming.
I declined to read that into the record, but you did send me several videos of your television as he's like destroying like the Washington Wizards backup center rotation, which is, that's grim stuff. But well, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great one, a marathon one.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
When we do playoff previews, depending on the format, we'd love to get you back on for some Wolves propaganda.
Anything to plug other than those stories? All the stuff we talked about, the Big Mother Jones feature, everybody should definitely go check out. But anything else? Any kind of like emerging stuff for the folks to monitor?
No, I am actually going to. I'll be visiting Minneapolis in the next month and might write something about that. So look out for that. I post all my new writing to my Substack when I have something come out. Eamon Whalen Substack. I just had a piece in. It just went live online, but it's in the Playboy. So bringing back reading Playboy for the articles.
Yeah, go buy it.
There we go. Yeah, the 10 hottest MILFs seen on the sidelines. Exactly. A good picture.
5 Minneapolis-based tricks that will wow your man.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Eamon.
All right. Pleasure.